You wouldn't build a house without a foundation, so don't build your business without one. This is Mindset Monday, where we lay out the tools, frameworks, and mindset you need to scale your contracting or trading business today. All right, welcome back to Mindset Monday. We're getting used to this new back end, if you will, that we're looking at. So I'm actually looking at myself twice, which is kind of weird, but hey, as my wife says, you like to talk anyway. Who cares? Well, welcome to the show. You guys know who I am. My name is Gerritt. I am the founder of Build Pro, where we help contractors learn how to put the people, processes, and the plan in place so that they can scale their contracting business. We are here in conjunction with Contractor Plus. But you guys know the drill. Drop your name and your business name in the comments, and we'll give you the good old shout out. Well, as you guys are doing this, I want to tell you a story, a real life story. There is nothing better than being part of a high performing team. Nothing better. And there's nothing worse than being part of a low performing team. And it's interesting when you think about the dynamics between those, right? I always like to pick on the Cleveland Browns. Why? Because they are an NFL franchise, one of the 32 NFL franchises. So they have access to the same pool of elite athletes as everyone else, right? And so you wonder, why do the Cleveland Browns suck? And they suck and they suck and they suck, even when they have some pretty good athletes, right? Now, I would say one of those is paying people that they shouldn't be paying. Oh, like a quarterback who they gave out 9 figures to, and well, good thing he's injured now, but giving money to people that they shouldn't be giving money to, that's number one. But there's something underneath it, right? There's something underneath it. And it's really the culture of the Cleveland Browns. Their fan base, amazing, right? The location that they play, great. And so there's really no excuse for the reason that they underperform. So why do they underperform? I can tell you why, because I've seen it 100 times. And it's this idea of a team, right? Now, let me give a couple of people a shout out. We got Edward Schwartz with ES Handy Services out of Zolfo Springs, Florida. Welcome to the show. Joseph with MJ Plumbing out of the Salt Lake City, Utah area. Welcome, my friend. Again, if you're here live with us, go ahead and drop your name and your business name, and we'll give you a good old shout out. Now, team, right? And you're like, but Gerritt, I try to hire people for my team and I just can't seem to find them. But Gerritt, we have a hiring process and I hire slow and I fire fast. But Gerritt, and you keep coming up with these excuses. Well, today I'm going to tell you the why behind it, right? Why is it that you can't seem to create accountability without drama? Accountability without drama. We got Matt Beckel with Beckel Electric out of Illinois. Welcome to the show. How do we create accountability without drama? Now, let me tell you a real life example. When I was working as a police officer, I was, lucky enough to work some specialty assignments. And one of those was on the SWAT team. And there's something really interesting that happened inside of the SWAT team, right? And it was that there was no BS tolerated, like none, right? And I don't say that in the sense of like you couldn't make a mistake, right? We're all human and we make mistakes. But what the difference was what was allowed to happen and not happen, and what was expected out of you. And in my entire life, I have never been part of an organization like that team. Never. And I'll explain to you why. Well, we got Sean here. Sean says, sorry about your Browns. They're not my Browns, bro. I can't take credit for it. Yes, go Bills. They played a hell of a game yesterday. Sean with S&M Landscaping out of Portland, Oregon. That's a wonderful place to be in, isn't it? I'll leave it at that. Just kidding. All love from us, Sean. Okay, so what was it that made working on that SWAT team so special? What made it so elite? Now, were they paying us any different than they were paying the other police officers? Nope. Pay wasn't any different. In fact, the requirements for the team were much higher, meaning that every single week, it wasn't an optional thing to go to the range and train. It was mandatory. It was expected. Okay. We would train together as a team twice a month for an entire shift, 8 to 10 hours. Okay. Again, it wasn't an optional thing. It was a mandatory thing. We got Amanda with Almost Anything Remodeling. Welcome, Amanda. And so when you look at it, there was the expectation that it was already at a high level. It wasn't optional to perform at a high level. It was the expectation, right? So the team set the standard. The team set the standard. Okay. What else? Inside of it was the culture of accountability. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, inside of a SWAT team, just like inside of a contracting business, every single person has a very particular role that they're expected to play, right? For some people, it was what we call the entry team, right? They were the ones that kicked in the door and that good stuff. For some people, it was what we call the perimeter. Their job was to make sure that if anybody jumped out of windows or doors, they were caught. For some people, they were part of the breaching team. For some people, they were part of the negotiating team, right? Everybody had a role. But inside of that, everybody had two things. Number one is clarity around what was expected out of them. Not, hey, you're a negotiator, so your job is to negotiate. Good luck. No, it was your job as a negotiator. Here's how you negotiate. Here's what's expected out of you. Here's when you should bring us in. Here's what this, here's what that. Super detailed, right? We got Adrian with Arc Roofing and Construction out of New Mexico. What part of New Mexico, my friend? I got some family out there. So think about this when we're talking about your team, because it wasn't just the expectation. It wasn't just the clarity around the roles. It was then the accountability that wrapped around the whole thing. Now, when I talk about accountability, I'm not talking about, did you do what you said you're going to do? Very basic level of accountability. What I talk about was the expectation of, I don't want to let my team down. The expectation of, I'm going to perform at my highest level every single time. I'm going to show up with a willingness to do what's necessary to get the job done. Now, did that always happen? No, there were operations that we went on and things went sideways. Thank the good Lord that, for the most part, we ended up okay. But things go sideways, right? I'll give you a perfect example. Funny example, but a perfect example. We were training entry into a house, right? And there's multiple ways to go into a house. But for us, we were training how to go in quietly, right? To try not to raise suspicions, alarms, so on and so forth. And this was at night, and we had the canines with us, right? The police canines. Now, the canines that we had, they're Belgian Malinois. Now, if you know anything about dogs, those dogs are freaking animals. They are vicious and they have ADD, right? So it's this weird combination of when they're on, when they're off, it's like a 4-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. So we're slowly clearing this residence, okay? And I'm in, and I go in and clear one door, and then the guys are waiting to go in and clear the left. Well, the sergeant at the time was kneeling, waiting for his turn to go in and clear. So he was covering down this hallway. All of a sudden, the dog got antsy and decided to latch on to his tricep. Now, if you guys have ever seen a Belgian Malinois, when it latches on, it does not let go and it tears, right? So he's here trying to maintain focus while a dog is literally chewing on his tricep. Now, we were able to get the dog off, and we had to take him back. He had to get medical attention. He had to have some surgery on him, right? But at the end of that operation, we did the same thing that we do on every single other operation. We gathered together in a circle and we said, what worked, what didn't work, what do we need to do better next time? And the canine officer fully admitted that he did not have control of his animal. And that was the reason that the dog latched onto this officer, right? Now we want the dog to latch onto a bad guy, not the good guy, but we had to work through that. But in order to work through solutions to problems, he had to own the fact that he was the problem, his dog, right? But he was the problem. He was in control of the dog. Therefore, he was the problem. Now think about this when it comes to your business. Think about it when it comes to accountability. I've told you guys before, I teach a lot of classes. I love teaching contractors. It's my thing, right? Last week we taught a couple classes. One was a workshop called How to Unfuster Cluck Your Life. If you'd like the recording, I can send it to you. But the second one was on Saturday, and it was on it was on innovative project management. Now, when I teach project management, what I teach is not, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. What I teach is kind of interesting because number one, and the most important thing I talk about is leadership. And the first and most important thing when it comes to leadership is accountability. It is your business. It may not be your fault that something went wrong, but it's probably your responsibility. Because here's the truth. If you can't own the problem, you will never own the solution. You're going to sit there waiting for someone to do it. And because you're the owner, guess what? They're all waiting for you and nothing gets done. We got a couple comments here that I want to drop in. We've got Jonathan Sexton. Howdy from Missouri. Hello, my friend. He says, yes, Lean Six Sigma, and talks about Kaizen. Kaizen in this field. Yes. So what Jonathan is talking about is accountability, structure, organization when it comes to businesses. And a lot in corporate America, they use this concept of Six Sigma and Kaizen. So yes, Jonathan, agree with you. We probably won't go that deep today, but yes, 100% agree with you. We got Darshan says, great explanation. Thank you, my friend. Jonathan says, it's always the leader when the team fails. 100%, right? If you guys can take anything away from this conversation, it's that you're the leader. It's your responsibility, right? I'll give you another example. My son, he's 19 years old, love him to pieces. He's still trying to figure out what to do with his life. He's had multiple jobs. He worked commercial landscaping. He was working at a restaurant for a little while. He went and sold solar this last summer in California. But when he got back, he's like, Dad, hey, I want to work in the trades. I'm like, great. I'm like, what do you want to do? And he's like, I don't know, whatever. So I reached out to a few contacts. Obviously I got a few, and he ends up landing with this installation company. Well, first day he gets told to meet at this gas station. So he meets the team lead. The lead's like, download this app on your phones, time tracking, and let's go out to the job. Right. So they go out to the job and they're putting insulation in a basement. Well, they're getting a little behind. So my son initially was just the material kid, right? The material guy. And it turned into, hey, here's a stapler. We need you to help us staple this insulation into the ceiling. Well, he gets about 10 minutes into this thing and realizes that there's water coming through this little piece of insulation that they just put up. Well, guess what? He stapled a water line. And you guys can guess how big of a problem that is. So they rip out the insulation, they have to find it, then they have to shut off the water, the step on, right? So what was a simple job turned into a very complicated job. Now, let me ask you, whose fault was it that he stapled the water line? So it was his fault, 100%. He's the one that did it. Stapler in hand, he stapled, his fault. Whose responsibility was it that he stapled the water line? The lead, right? And then ultimately the owner. Because if you didn't read between the lines, the in between the lines was there was no training process. And you have somebody doing a job that you somehow fully expect them to be able to do without any instruction, right? It's like, good luck. And so he got reamed out that day and never went back. Lasted one day. Never wanted to go back. But can you blame him? Right? So think about this as the business owner. Jonathan says, poor instruction. Yeah. Amanda says, it's his fault. Yes. But his boss, right? His boss's responsibility. Think about this, right? So when we're talking about a team and we're talking about how to create accountability without drama, it 100% starts with you. It starts with you. Oh, by the way, it ends with you too, but it starts with you. And so you have to get comfortable in the uncomfortableness of like, it's my responsibility. I can't give the details, but I will tell you that we had on one of our projects, on one of our commercial projects that we're working, we had somebody get injured. Now, it was 100% their fault. They weren't using the safety harnesses they were supposed to. We'd already briefed them on it. They had acknowledged it. They'd done everything they were supposed to. Well, they had been told everything that they were supposed to do, but there was an injury. Okay, because the safety equipment wasn't being used. Whose fault is that? Well, it's 100% their fault. Whose responsibility is it? You guessed it, ours. Is we had to sit down with the project manager and talk through it and figure out like, why did it happen? Did we instruct them? By the way, in our contract, we have an entire page just on safety. So we had safety brief, we had all this documentation, we had everything, right? But it's our responsibility to say, okay, why did this happen? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? And the unfortunate truth is they're not going to work any more projects with us because they were warned multiple times to use their safety equipment. They didn't. Injury happens. Our responsibility, their fault. And you were told, cool. right? So what do we do with the standard? We got Don Ridgway from Arlington. I think it's Maryland, maybe Texas. M&D Haul Off and Fence and Install Repair. Welcome. So it was our responsibility, their fault. And so if we don't do anything about it, what does that tell them? That tells them that it's okay. That tells them that, yeah, we might get a slap on the wrist, but they're okay with it, which means it can happen again. And I think about your business, by the way, and you guys don't know this year, I've either instructed or worked with probably 750 contractors. And I have these conversations almost daily. So I know exactly what's happening, not just here, but exactly where you're at. Why? Because all construction business run exactly the same. You're all good tradespeople, and then somehow you get shoved into, hey, look, let's run a business, right? And you're like, how am I doing this thing? Okay. So if I can tell you anything that will change the way that you will run your business forever and ultimately change the outcome, i.e. the results that you get from it, growth, profit, so on and so forth, it will be the idea of accountability. Okay. The concept of accountability. So how do we set accountability inside of our business? In other words, how do we set expectations that the team will actually follow? Right? It's not just about setting expectations. It's about setting expectations that the team will actually follow. Now, according to Gallup is this company that they help people with polls, right? They said only 50% of employees say they clearly understand what's expected of them at work. 50%, which means half of your people nod their heads, give you the thumbs up, and have no freaking clue what it is that you want out of them. No clue, right? Comes back to you, comes back to leadership. Okay. So number one, most important is making sure that your people understand what is expected out of them. And more importantly, how. If you want to hold somebody accountable, great. Tell them what they're being held accountable to and how they're going to be held accountable. Okay. Number two, if you tell somebody what they're being held accountable to and how, you have to follow through. I have a plumbing contractor that I work with in California. They do about 16 million a year, right? They're doing pretty well, okay? Except they had a problem. And the problem was, yes, the work was coming in, but they weren't getting the work done on time. And so we dug into it a little bit. And what we realized is they wanted or had the quote unquote expectation for their plumbers to be at the job, or excuse me, at the office at 7:30 or between 7:30 and 8 a.m. But what they had was people, and they had 40 techs. They had techs that were streaming in from 7:30 to about 10:30 a.m., which means they were missing out on a chunk of the day strictly because people weren't there on time. Now think about this for a moment, okay? Are you the type of owner that says, hey, we expect you to be on a job site at 7:30, 8 a.m., 6 a.m., whatever it is. And then when someone shows up late, you just tell them not to do it again. And then they do it again. So you tell them again not to do it again. And then they do it again. And they're like, they're not going to do anything about it, right? The expectation is not there. You may verbally be saying it, but the expectation, the standard isn't there, right? Same thing with this company. So what ended up happening, I said, okay, on Friday, you're going to have a team meeting with all of your staff. And you're going to say, listen, come Monday, you need to be here before 8 a.m. If you're not here before 8 a.m., we're closing the roll-up door. You're not getting your supplies for the day, which means you're not working. And of course, there was the typical, oh, that's BS, blah, 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 whatever. I'm like, whatever. Monday rolls around. They close the roll-up door at 8. 30 of the 40 techs were there. 10 were not. 10 showed up sometime between 8 o'clock and 10:30. The first thing they did was go to the office, yell, scream, complain. Okay. But at the end of the day, who did they have to blame for this? Nobody. And so they're like, peace out. See you guys tomorrow. Guess what happened the next day? Well, 38 of the 40 techs showed up by 8 a.m. The 2 that didn't, they quit. And now that's the standard. They reset the standard. Okay. So if we look at your business right now and say, what is it missing? I have a team, and your team might just be 1. It's okay. You might be 30, but you have a team and they're not performing at the level that you want them to. I challenge you to look in the mirror and say, am I the reason that they're not performing? Okay. Think about that. Now, by the way, the easiest thing to do is make sure it's all written down, because then you have something to fall back on. Okay. But number one, most important, is this comes down to you. You have to create the non-negotiables for your team, the non-negotiables for your crew. If you don't, they will, and you probably won't like them. The second thing, you have to follow up. You have to give feedback. If you want to reward good behavior, or you want people to do more good behavior, reward the good behavior, right? Like, there's a difference between being an owner and being an employee. And you have to understand, employees want to be challenged to raise their standard of work, but they also want to be rewarded. So reward them. For some people, that's money. For some people, that's time off. For some people, that's a vacation or a party or whatever the thing is. Figure out what it is. For you, you need to have that conversation, right? Talk to them about what's working. Talk to them about what's not working. Talk to them about the expectation, right? Give them feedback. According to the Harvard Business Review, yes, those smart people at Harvard, right? Teams that receive weekly feedback are 3 times more engaged and 25% more productive. I don't know. I just gave you the cheat code there. Hopefully you're listening. 3 times more engaged, 25% more productive. Now think, if you had the same crew, no bigger, same crew, and they were 25% more productive, what would that do for you? Oh, I'm going to do some simple math. If they're 25% more productive, that would mean 25% higher profits in your pocket. All things being equal, they're 25% more productive. Okay. So you're making more money on your time. Now, as we kind of wrap this up, I want you to understand, people are people. And in order for you to grow your business, you're going to have to leverage people. But your job is to find the right people. And it starts with creating that level of accountability, that standard, that expectation that you have, and sticking to it, right? You might want to be like, oh, well, I want to be the nice boss. I want to be the good guy. Well, good luck. You won't be the profitable guy. You won't be the guy that scales, because that's not the way it works. It's not the way it works. So you want a higher performing team? You want accountability? Cool. Your job is to implement it. Doesn't mean you have to be an a-hole about it, but it is your job to implement. It's your job to set the standard. It's your job to accept responsibility for the good things and the bad things, and then do something about it. All right. Listen, Contractor Plus version 2 is live, and you should be right up in there right now. Everything with Estimatic AI, everything with managing your prospects and your clients, your jobs, it's all inside of there. So challenge you guys to get in there, start using it for what it's meant for, and that's to help you grow your contracting business. All right. That's all we got for you guys today. You know what time it is. It's time to get after it. 3, 2, 1.